Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Construction Record. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me today I have.
Hi, it's Gavin Daly here. I'm the architect and engineering manager for Access Communications here in the Canadian market, and I've been with the company for just about 11 years.
And we're going to talk about smart buildings today, and we all know about regulation of temperature and solar panels and that sort of thing, but your company does things a little differently. Let's go into how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is such a broad topic, and there's a lot of things that we really need to touch on if we're going to talk about smart buildings and smart building technologies. With our company, there's really two areas that we tend to focus on. One is security, and that's kind of what Access is mostly known for, and video surveillance and that kind of thing. But the other part of it is also now operational efficiency. So it's really those two parts: operational efficiency and security. And then I probably add a third thing onto there, which is we call these things areas of interest. So in any particular building, there are some areas that we would class as areas of interest, the things that we can help provide solutions to make things, maybe people's lives a little easier, a little safer and secure. And then again, help that building improve its operation.
And what would be some of those areas of interest?
When we look at a facility, there's different locations. So if you start at the outside, for example, you have things like parking lots. Inside the building, you have receptions or help desks or counters. You've got other things like hallways and stairwells. There may be common areas like a cafe, for example, lots of people are going to gather. And then you might have areas of a facility that could be more restricted areas that you don't just want residents or general members of the public or to be able to access that. Could be commercial real estate, smaller private businesses within these buildings operating. That again, you don't just want to have any kind of free flow traffic going through. You want to be able to have those restricted areas. So, and within that, there are a lot of different solutions that exist, which I'd be happy to touch on if you need.
And what are some of the design approaches for these smart buildings?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess if you start on kind of the outside of the building, so before you actually get there or physically go in, I mean, how you get to that building in one of two or maybe three ways is, well, one is you may drive there and go into a parking lot. And that's something that may require a solution, such as it could be license plate recognition on a gated entry system. So, for example, you may have a visitor area that people can just kind of come and go, but you may have areas that only people authorized to be in that building should go in. So whether you're working there, or could be even a residential building. And there's ways now to add license plates to the databases and authenticate based on plates. That would be, for example, on the vehicles, then getting into the building, let's say on foot. You do need a good system access control on the doors, right? So you have things like smart network controllers that exist. And then that kind of leads to, especially over the last couple of years here and things going on with the pandemic, is limited amount of occupancy in certain buildings and them not wanting kind of large crowds in certain areas. So being able to kind of manage that as well and minimizing contacts. And we use combinations of video surveillance and access control to do that. So that's kind of just a little bit on the parking lots. Inside the buildings, if you think about things like receptions or help desk areas and counters and things of that nature, we have things like network intercoms. So that helps with remote visitor entry. So being able to either just, simply push a button, call a remote operator, have a conversation, or with the tenant in the building. It ties into smart audio systems, network-based audio systems, where you have things like speakers that can have pre-recorded messages that'll play, but at the same time, they can also be used for other things like playing background music, or maybe even making a emergency announcement if something was, touch wood, was to go wrong in the building. So a bit of a return on investment there on the technology, where you may pay a little higher upfront cost, but you're getting multiple uses out of that technology, not just one thing. kind of keep going throughout that building. You have the other areas, like I mentioned, things like the hallways, and stairways, where you may want to have touchless access control. You have technologies like QR codes. They're becoming a lot more commonplace. Most people have smartphones these days, and you can generate a QR code and use that as part of your access control system, and have essentially a completely touchless system. You have automatic doors opening and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you do have the security element of that too, like hallways, stairwells, and that could be a place where likely something could go wrong. You could have, an incident or an accident or something of that nature, and you want to make sure you have adequate coverage there as well. Then you get into other areas, like I mentioned, the common areas or things like cafes. You may want to have things like occupancy estimation. So just getting a kind of a general count. Are we dealing with large crowds of people or just small amount of people in a certain area? The ability to count, and also the direction that they take. So it's kind of coming out of it now, but at one stage we sort of had a lot of that one-way traffic type thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to automate that using that technology was kind of popular there. But also the network audio part tying into that as well. So playing automated messages, pre-recorded messages and things like that. And then, of course, the restricted areas, just areas of a building where maybe people shouldn't go except for building management or superintendents or contractors and things of that nature, where you only want to be able to give certain access to certain people that need to be there, right?
And how will that work going forward? Because we're going to see more hybrid buildings, more spacing, that sort of thing, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic.
We've seen kind of, I suppose, depending on what part of the country or the world you're in, or whoever may be listening to this, we've seen some companies like scale down a lot. We've seen others scale up. Now, if you're scaling down and you have less people in the office, there is also a certain risk that comes with that, which is the type of, we'll call it your own intellectual property or your physical property that may be there in the building. And if nobody's there, everybody's working from home because of this pandemic, what's happening in the building? You might have a data center in your office. What happens if something goes down? Is there even a local IT person that could come in? So I guess the ability to be able to effectively monitor, we saw an increased need for that. And just for companies and company owners, and to just kind of have a better idea of what's actually going on in the office because there's not so many people there. We saw, an increased need for general video surveillance and things like that nature. AI kind of ties into this a lot, and that's a real hot topic as well, and especially even in smart buildings. The detection type technologies that are there. So if nobody's supposed to be in the office at all, well, you may not even have the cleaner coming in and out, but if somebody does come in, maybe you want to know about it. So the ability, it's not all that new, I guess, but I will say it's gotten kind of better and more accurate, which is that the ability to remotely receive things like notifications that, hey, somebody's there, maybe send a small video clip to, whoever needs to get it, the business owner or security, if they have such a department, do that kind of video verification and say, okay, we know who this person is. It's okay for them to be there. We know about it. Kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So we did kind of see an increased need for that. And, not so much tied directly to smart buildings, but we did see it kind of spill into education a little bit, right? Especially with all of the streaming that's going on and the Zoom calls and the team calls and that kind of thing. So kind of brought us back to our roots even a little bit, because for those that don't know, Axis, when we started in this industry, we weren't really anything to do with smart buildings. We made a network camera that you could say was a type of a webcam. I mean, most of what we did was web attraction kind of stuff, online streaming and things of that nature. And so it kind of, pulled us back to our roots a little bit, you might say, in the last couple of years.
And you mentioned AI and streaming. I would assume there's a lot more data coming at you that needs to be analyzed in an automated fashion.
That's right. There's a ton of stuff. I mean, when you're talking about AI and video surveillance, well, network-based, we'll call them just color cameras, so to speak. Um, there's a wealth of information in an image to begin with, and but the way these AI algorithms start to work is, and we would use the term deep learning, right? And the ability to recognize not just people but also objects. Like this is a cup, or this is an umbrella, because there's huge data sets of all of these items that it's pretty easy to train the algorithms to recognize. Now, in our world, we don't necessarily care that this person held an umbrella and this was a cup, but what we might care about is things like colors, like this person wore a green sweater or had blue pants. It makes the ability to search things out a lot more quicker and efficient. So if and if there ever is an incident and an operator has to go back and find that quickly, instead of doing it what I would call the old-fashioned way, which is you're kind of just going back, looking through video and trying to just get a general time range, and hopefully, something interesting jumps out to the operator. Now it's gotten a lot more intuitive, where you might have small pieces of information such as, hey, I'm looking for a red truck, or I'm looking for a person that was wearing a red jacket, and you put that filter in, and all of a sudden you're taking, hundreds or possibly thousands of hours worth of information and condensing that down and finding what you need very, very quickly. So that's one part of it. But the other part is with the building and the operational efficiency, and there's building management systems that exist out there, and things are starting to kind of amalgamate, and customers don't want 5 and 6 different complex systems to have to manage. They're trying to bring it all in, and would sooner have it all in one system. So we have seen the need to start sending data into the building management system. Maybe they tie that into, you touched on this earlier on, but things like the energy management or the lighting of the building. There are sensors that are out there that do those things as well, right? You got a lot of these kind of nodes or endpoints or IoT devices, if you want to call it that are now hanging out there on your network, and people just want to kind of bring that all together, right? So we've definitely seen an increase in that over the last few years.
And so how does sustainability, which is sort of the base layer of all smart buildings, how does that tie into this?
Yeah, sustainability. So, I mean, that's quite a broad topic in itself, but I think where we sort of fit into that, there's a couple things. One would be, I mean, a lot of the new buildings now you tend to get things like LEED certified, and the energy efficiency of a building, like you touched on solar panels on the roof. I think where we might come in, sustainability, one from a company perspective, and sort of there's ethics and there's all those kind of things of the companies you're dealing with. In terms of the products themselves, I think where we sort of become more sustainable over the last few years is starting to use less toxic type products and chemicals just in the manufacturing. So PVC free, lead free, and that kind of thing. That's been a big part of the Axis, I guess, mantra over the last few years. So something we do try to take seriously, and we've seen ourselves get into a lot more of those LEED type buildings because of that. Especially on the architectural side, right? The architects that are putting these things together. I mean, those questions come up, right? Like, is there any lead in your products, and how much recycled plastics are being used, and things like that. So we I'm going to say periodically, I guess is probably more accurate. We send that information out to the building designers that are putting these together, right? So sustainability, and then I suppose may not be a question that you're going to ask, but the other would be cybersecurity, right? Because that's also something you got to think about. I would argue from a sustainability standpoint as well, long term, would be the maintenance of that system, right? It's got to be kept up to date. Like firmware is up to date. If you have things like any potential flaws or breaches or in your products, that they have to be very sort of quickly patched and dealt with, right?
And finally, if people are interested in Access Communications, where should they go to find out more information?
Sure. Yeah, the probably best thing, go to the Access website. It's axis.com. Take a look at some of the solutions that we have in there for smart buildings. I think we class it as commercial real estate. I think to be accurate, and they'll see a whole wealth of the different solutions that we have, and contact info is there if anyone wants any further info. I would like to learn more about our solutions.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot, Warren. Thanks for having me.
And if you'd like to hear more of the Construction Record, you can hear us on Amazon Music, Apple Music, and Spotify, as well as the Daily Commercial News and the Journal of Commerce websites. Thanks for listening.